Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 12. So now we're in the nervous system. Chapter 12 talks about the different divisions of the nervous system and how we can describe the nervous system, as well as how nervous tissue functions. So the main function of the nervous system is to take in stimuli and determine what responses need to occur due to those different stimuli. So the nervous system functions in controlling and interpreting sensations and delivering the proper response. So the first thing that the nervous system does is it takes in information through structures called receptors. We have external receptors, receptors on our skin that take in information from the external environment. We also have internal receptors that take in information from internal regions of the body. These all send signals to the brain or spinal cord, to the CNS, for processing to determine what type of response we need to have. And then that information is going to be sent out through efferent neurons to effectors. And effectors can be muscles or glandular tissue that will then bring about whatever change we have to have happen. Structurally, we can organize the nervous system as the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord, or your peripheral nervous system, which are the nerves and ganglion outside of the brain and spinal cord. We also can look at the cells of the nervous system. Structurally, we have neurons. You can see those. And then we have these tiny little neuroglial cells. Neurons are the cells that are excitatory and send signals. Glial cells are your protector cells of the nervous system. When we look at a cross-section of the brain, we see that the brain has both white matter and gray matter. White matter are the axons of the neurons. So remember, there's the neurons. The axons of most of our neurons, specifically the neurons in the CNS, are going to have this myelin sheath surrounding it. Myelin is a fatty substance, and so it makes this white matter. Out here on the peripheral of the nervous system, or of the brain, we have gray matter. The gray matter are the cell bodies and the dendrites that take in the information. We can also look at the ganglion outside of the CNS, and we have a nucleus inside the CNS. So when we have a cluster of cell bodies in the CNS that have a similar function, that's called a nucleus within the CNS. Outside of that, that same cluster of cell bodies is known as a ganglion. So just to remind you, there are lots of ways that we use the term nucleus. The nucleus can mean the region of the cell that contains DNA. The nucleus can be the region of the atom that contains the protons and neutrons. And then a nucleus in the brain is a cluster of cell bodies that have a single major function. In the CNS, when we have axon bundles running, we call them tracts. In the PNS, these same axon bundles are called nerves. So here we have the optic nerve. This is one nerve that moves from the eye, takes information from the eye, and moves it to a region called the optic chiasm. At the optic chiasma, the information is then ran along an optic tract. So the name of this information, of this nerve, changes from optic nerve to optic tract. And just a little information here, you can see that this optic nerve sends information to both sides of our brain. Same with this one. So we actually get information from both the right and left optic nerve through the optic tracts on both the left and right side. Functionally, we can also classify the nervous system as either a sensory or a motor division. Under the sensory division, we have a somatic sensory and a visceral or autonomic sensory. Under the motor division, we have somatic or visceral or autonomic again. Visceral and autonomic are the same. So somatic sensory division, let me put the picture up, sorry, carries information from the environment or from the body to our CNS, and we tend to receive that information and we can perceive that information, so we understand there's something consciously going on. This could be taste, smell, sight, touch, as well as body position, proprioception, so knowing what our joints are doing at any given time. These are all things that we tend to be consciously aware of. Whereas visceral or autonomic sensory, still an afferent division, takes information from organs of the viscera or internal organs and sends signals to the CNS. And this information we don't tend to be consciously aware of. So things like our stomach moving, our intestines moving materials through, breathing, heart activity, blood pressure. Those are things that are visceral, sensory, that send signals to our brain, and then responses will come through the efferent or the motor division. So somatic motor division then is going to be transmitting information from the CNS to our skeletal muscles. And in general, again, we're consciously aware of these. So something like pushing the accelerator on our car, scratching an itch on our arm. Those are things we are consciously aware of. The autonomic division is going to transmit information from the CNS to organs that are not under conscious control. So things like our heart, smooth muscles, glandular tissue, even our diaphragm, which is skeletal muscle, but it's not always something we think about. So the autonomic division can be actually broken down even further into a sympathetic or a parasympathetic motor division. Sympathetic division is your fight or flight division. So this is going to increase the, so let me just say it this way. Fight or flight is basically our division that allows us to deal with stressors. So if a bear were to walk into the room and growl, we would all be able to, or hopefully be able to run away or get away from that bear so it couldn't hurt us. That would be an example of our sympathetic division working. But the same sympathetic division, I'll just say, also works when we are taking a test. So that same stressor that, you have to run from a bear to survive is the same stressor that you feel when you are taking an exam, which is kind of weird. But when the sympathetic division is activated, certain organs are going to be getting all the nutrients and other organs are going to be shut down. We don't need to digest food when we are trying to survive a zombie apocalypse. We'll talk more about this in Chapter 15. The parasympathetic division then is our relaxed or calm system. So this is the rest relaxation. This is our normal digestion system so that our organs can metabolize normally. Digestion occurs. We can process urine properly. We can do all the things that we have to do to get rid of toxins and to make sure that we have all the nutrients we need in our body. So we need the sympathetic to keep us from danger and parasympathetic to allow our organs to go back to its normal homeostasis. Here's another picture showing the breakdown of the nervous system. So we have the CNS, which is the brain and the spinal cord. We have the PNS, which are all the nerves outside of the brain, and the ganglia outside of the brain and spinal cord. And then something I haven't talked about yet, and I won't talk a lot about in this chapter, is called the ENS, or the digestive nervous system. So the ENS, enteric nervous system, is kind of like the second brain of the body. So we have this large brain here, but the digestive system also has billions of neurons. So it's like the second largest nervous system. And it functions independently from the brain and spinal cord, but it does have interface. So the brain and the digestive, the gut, they do talk to each other through one of the nerves called the vagus nerve. And so information can be transmitted in both directions. We'll talk a lot more about this when we get into the digestive system in second semester. This is an MRI showing how the brain lights up when we do have some stimulus, visual stimulus. So this would be like that processing so that we can then understand what we're seeing. I'm going to stop this lecture. Yeah, I'm going to stop this lecture, and then I'm going to make the next lecture, okay? So we'll talk about neurons and neuroglial cells in the next chapter, or in the next lecture video, not chapter.